the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. Welcome to the two Mississippi museums, and thank you for joining us to celebrate the lives of William and Elise Winter, the extraordinary lives of William and Elise Winter. I know how much it means to the Winter family to have so many people with us today, both here on site, as many as we could fit, as you can tell, and watching online, so thank you all. Governor William Winter died December 18th, 2020, at the age of 97. His life's work was supporting public education in Mississippi. First Lady Elise Winter, his wife of 70 years, shared her husband's commitment to public education and fought for the cause alongside him, in addition to the work that she did for Fondren Presbyterian Church, Habitat for Humanity, and other organizations that were important to her. Elise Winter died just 6 months after her husband, on July 17, 2021. It is most fitting that we gather here today to honor the Winters. Governor Winter led the MDAH Board of Trustees for nearly 50 years, making an unmistakable impact on the department and the state. Winter's greatest legacy at MDAH was the opening of the two Mississippi museums in December of 2017. The Museum of Mississippi History and the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum stand at the intersection of Governor Winter's greatest passions: history, education, and racial justice. And he was a leading force behind the public-private partnership through which they were built. Governor Winter reminded us often that we must come to terms with our history because it shapes our lives today. He believed that these museums would help, that they would, quote, challenge us to have a better understanding of where we have come from, and then inspire us to work harder to find our common ideals and goals. He promised that, quote, we will find that we have much more in common than what might appear to divide us. No one understood more deeply the need to face our past than Governor and Mrs. Winter. And yet no one moved through life with more optimism and hope. Let us be guided by their spirit, strengthened in our conviction that all of us, and especially our children, must understand who we are and where we have come from. And let us be lifted by their hope, by their faith that we could, in Winter's words, use our history to build a fairer, a more just, and a more stable society. Thank you.
I'm Spence Flatgard, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees, welcome to your museums. What a special day. On another special day here 5 years ago at the opening ceremony, Governor Winter told us that these museums were built for all of us, but most especially they were built for our children and our grandchildren and future generations. And then he spent the rest of his life bringing Mississippi's children here. And he did that by raising money for an endowment that funds school field trips to the two museums, which he called Mississippi's largest classroom. After he went on to heaven, the Winter family teamed up with the Foundation for Mississippi History to complete the endowment, now named the William and Elise Winter Education Endowment in their memory. Today, I'm thrilled to announce that we've reached the initial goal for the endowment of $5 million. We started with a generous gift of $1 million from the Kellogg Foundation and added another $4 million through the generosity of the donors listed in your program. Our goal is to keep building the endowment with the momentum you've given us so that every child in Mississippi will be able to come here on a school field trip for generations to come. I can't think of a more fitting legacy for Governor and Mrs. Winter. And we're grateful to the Winter family for helping us realize your parents' dream, especially the 3 Winter daughters, Eleanor, Ann, and Lily. Thank you. And it's wonderful to have so many of the Winter's grandchildren and great-grandchildren with us today. Also with us is the Winter's minister, the Reverend Rob Lowry. He concluded Governor Winter's graveside service with the words, "Rest well, my friend, we'll take it from here." And then y'all have given us an amazing example. That's our pledge to Governor Winter and to Mrs. Winter and to the Winter family. You've given us an amazing example of how to serve each other and serve our state. And we'll take it from here. In that spirit, thank you to the donors to the Endowment. Your generosity is a beautiful tribute to the Winters who we all love. And you've also made a gift to our state. Our children will be able to come here, see our history, our shared history, and dream of a bright future together. Thank you. These museums were a long-time dream of Governor Winter. He and Justice Reuben Anderson met with Governor Haley Barbour on the idea. And Governor Barbour worked with the legislature to make it happen. A special thank you to our legislative leaders who are here today, current and former. I see a number of legislators here that were in the fight. And Governor Musgrove and Governor Bryant and Governor Reeves for your support. To the museum donors, all of you, thank you for your vision, your continued support. You make all this possible. And it's only right to acknowledge Governor Barbour for his leadership in building these museums. I'm pleased to announce that we've named a permanent exhibit at the entrance of the Mississippi Museum for History in honor of Governor Barbour and First Lady Marcia Barbour. This was made possible through their friends' donations in an effort led by their nephew Henry. Thank you, Henry. You know Governor Barbour's inspiring life story. He was born in Yazoo City, where he still lives. He went from Yazoo City to the Heights of Washington. He started as President Reagan's political director, founded a top lobbying firm, became chairman of the Republican National Committee. He served 2 transformative terms as governor, which included helping our state bounce back stronger than ever after Hurricane Katrina. And he worked with Governor Winter, who was a key advisor on his recovery commission. And as I mentioned, the 2 governors teamed up on these 2 museums that tell our story. We have the most compelling history of any state in America. We have it all. Native American history, Civil War, civil rights, birthplace of Medgar and Merle Evers, whose daughter Rena is sitting with the Winters as part of the family today. Our state is the birthplace of William Faulkner, Eudora Welty, and James Earl Jones. We're the birthplace of American music, of Elvis and B.B. King. And praise God, this is the birthplace of William and Elise Winter and Haley Barbour. It's my privilege to introduce our friend and the 63rd governor of the state of Mississippi, Haley Barbour.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Spence and Katie. Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor to share the stage with President Clinton on this very special occasion in celebration of the lives of these 2 extremely beloved Mississippians. In 1993, shortly after President Clinton was inaugurated, I was elected chairman of the Republican National Committee. And for 4 years led the loyal opposition. Despite my position, President Clinton was always gracious to me. I used to say he could charm the skin off a snake and sell Fords to Chevrolet dealers. Later, President Clinton helped us in Mississippi after Katrina. He worked with former President George H.W. Bush, 41, to raise support for efforts on the coast. With Katrina, there were no Democrats or Republicans. We all worked together for our state. Thank you, Mr. President. Governor Winter, as you can imagine, played a critical role in our recovery efforts. I appointed a commission for recovery, rebuilding, and renewal that Jim Barksdale, who's here with us in the audience, chaired. Governor Winter was a leading member of the commission. He understood the stakes because when he became governor, it was more than 10 years after Hurricane Camille, and the coast was still recovering. Governor Winter was a real leader on the commission and in the recovery effort, as I knew he would be, because he loved Mississippi. From the coast to the Memphis suburbs, Jackson or Hattiesburg or Starkville or Oxford. Since I was a early striver in the Republican Party in Mississippi, some of you will be surprised by one of my favorite William Winter stories. Sometime before the filing deadline to run for governor in 1979, I was flying to Washington through Memphis. You actually could, we had direct air service to Memphis back then. As I was sitting in my seat, William Winter came up the aisle of the plane, stopped, asked if I'd come back and sit by him once we took off. Sure. When I got back to where he's sitting, I sat down and we exchanged pleasantries. He's always very, very gracious and nice to me. Then he told me he was thinking about running for governor again. Even though I was a Republican political operative, he asked me if I thought he ought to do it. Even though I was a Republican political operative, I told him what I thought. And I thought he was the Democrat who'd make the best governor if the state elected another Democrat. Quite a possibility, since the Democrats have elected every governor since Reconstruction. That is, for more than 100 years in a row, the Democrats have won the governorship. But, you know, I don't want to take any chances. We Republicans didn't elect a governor until 12 years later, when Kirk Fordyce was elected. So that day on the airplane, I told him he ought to run. Sometime later, Governor Winter told me he thought about my answer and decided I was being honest. Of course, my advice isn't what convinced him to run, but I always felt like it gave him more confidence in me as we went through political trails in the future. Marcia and my fondness for the Winter thinking extended to Mrs. Winter. Ms. Winter cared about the trustees who worked at the governor's mansion, and she tried to help them, such as helping them find jobs when they were released. Marcia had the same attitude. When I pardoned the final group of inmates who worked at the governor's mansion, Marcia did something similar. She knew that to get and hold a job, they needed to have a car to get back and forth to work. She set up car financing at a bank for all the pardoned inmates. When they bought a car, as every one of them did, she guaranteed the note at the bank. And I'm proud to say, all but one of them paid off the note, paid her back. But they all went to work, which is what we wanted them to do. My most important memory of William Winter occurred when I was governor, Judge. During my first term, William Winter and Judge Reuben Anderson, who, by the way, had been a trial judge in my home county, Yazoo County, when I was still trying lawsuits, they came to see me, and I really liked Judge Anderson just like I really liked William Winter, so I was tickled to see him. They knew I had talked about the state's building a civil rights museum. I had talked about building it at Tougaloo. Tougaloo College, just above Jackson, was a center of civil rights activity in the 50s and 60s. They encouraged me. As we got further through the term, I got the legislature to authorize raising $500,000 in private money to pay for a plan, for drawings, for how to go about doing this. And that went very well. Then a movement started in Jackson that advocated building the Civil Rights Museum in Jackson and not at Tougaloo. The legislature started dividing over the site and over the issue, and that resulted in our running out of gas for a little while. But soon after my second term started, Governor Winter and Judge Anderson came back to see me. They brought me the solution to the site for the Civil Rights Museum, and I had sense enough to recognize they were absolutely right. Of course, we're sitting in the solution right now. For a number of years, the Board of Trustees for the Mississippi Department of Archives and History had planned to fund and build a Mississippi History Museum not far from the old state capitol. The lot was large enough, Governor Winter and Judge Anderson told me, that we could build both the buildings, the History Museum, Civil Rights Museum, and there would be room for all kinds of amenities. And as you can see, they were exactly right. I took it to the legislature soon thereafter. Work on the design of the two interlocking buildings started very quickly. And here we have the result. I am very proud to tell you, today this is the only civil rights museum in the country built primarily with state money. We invested about $90 million of state bond money to build this. We raised about $20 million of private contributions on top of that, plus the $5 million that Spence talked about. I wanted this built with state money because I wanted to show that this fabulous facility, both facilities in fact, were paid for by the people of our state, not some wealthy foundation in New York that built it. People who loved our state built it, loved our state, warts and all. They're very proud of our state, though they recognize our mistakes and our errors in our history. But they also understand what we've accomplished, how much progress we've made, and how much progress is being made. 3 different legislatures authorized money for this project. More than half was authorized after I was out of office. I'm grateful to my successors, Phil Bryant, Tate Reeves, because they never slowed down. And I'm grateful to the legislators from all 3 of those legislatures who appropriated the money, never to look back, and know that what we've done is great for our state, but most of all, great for our children. William Winter believed that every bit as much as as Judge Anderson would have told you from the days that we met and talked about that. Despite COVID, 500,000 visitors have toured the museums since they opened on the 200th anniversary of Mississippi's statehood in December of 2017. That day, Governor Winter spoke very proudly on the occasion of the opening. I got snowed in Washington, did not make it. Governor Bryant spoke. President Trump spoke. Thank you all for rearranging where I could make a return performance. I'm sorry I missed it, Mr. President, but I'm glad you made it for this one.
When I think of the word courage, I can think very quickly of William Winter. It took great courage to stand for educational reform. It took great courage to stand for racial reconciliation. It took enormous courage to stand up to the Citizens Council.
It was tough to be a moderate back in the 1960s, and that's why his life was threatened by the Ku Klux Klan.
Your man's in extreme danger. What's happened? There was a meeting today, and your man has been marched. It's fanatical. He's not going to serve. That's pretty big a blunt. First detail. If I gave you any more information as to where the meeting was held and who was in it, my line would be worth a bit more than William Winter.
I can remember being in his locker room at this high school thing down on the coast, and he had a very specific death threat, and these guys didn't want him to go, and he refused not to go out. It was very courageous.
He was not afraid to stand up and say, we need to put this era of segregation behind us. We need to accommodate to those who want to go to our colleges and universities, whether they're black or white.
That kind of courage, that kind of willingness to speak out, to stand up, to take a position contrary to the consensus was quite extraordinary.
I think William Winter is one of those individuals that come up in history who can actually look themselves in a mirror and say, I actually made a difference. My being here made a difference.
The state legislature, tax collector, state treasurer, lieutenant governor, and every role that he's been involved in, he's been outstanding.
I was just taken by his message, by his vision for the future, by what he thought Mississippi could accomplish.
Governor Winter had clear goals. Governor Winter wanted change to help people, but he was never strident. He was never other than a gentleman. He was always willing to work across the aisle. He sought common sense solutions that would help a situation.
Well, I don't know if I ever knew anybody who, no matter what their politics were, didn't like Governor Winter because he was such a kind gentleman.
He made sure everybody knew where he stood on race, on civil rights legislation, on education legislation, you name it.
He owned an issue, and that issue was education. And that was his pathway to election. That was his pathway to success.
Governor Winter said numerous times, the road out of the poorhouse runs by the schoolhouse. We had to create more jobs, and the only way to do that and keep those jobs was through an educated workforce.
It was at that point that we proposed the education reforms of the 1980s.
It was hailed all across this country as an ideal piece of legislation, and people were astonished that that thoughtful legislation came out of the state of Mississippi.
Carl Rowan, a prominent journalist in this country, explained it correctly to the American people through his column by calling the reform legislation in Mississippi the most important civil rights economic development legislation in that year, 1982.
The truth is, politically, William Winter never should have done this. It was not in his interest to go down the same road that was almost certain to fail.
He had engineered a major education reform in the poorest state in the Union.
What he started was the raising of consciousness about the critical need for improved education in the state. And I don't think his long-lasting impact can be overstated.
He was a person that deserved many more years in public service, but 4 years of what he did changed the state of Mississippi and changed the way in which all the other leaders looked at what you could do as governor.
When Bill Winter passed that bill, I thought, well, if Mississippi can do it, maybe I can do it. It'd be a great thing, and this is something we could all do together.
If he thought something was right, he was going to stay with it until he succeeded, regardless of setbacks and disappointments, of which there were many.
That's what leadership is. It's the most important ingredient a politician or a public servant can have, and I can't think of a better example of leadership than William Winter.
The greatest dividing line is not race. It's the line between those who have a good education and those who do not have a good education. And that's the cruelest fault line of all. But that's one that we can do something about. I just thought he was the most remarkable person I had ever had the pleasure of knowing. And then I met Elise. We all know what the governor did, but Elise, that quiet force behind him, that person who
cheered him on and loved him unconditionally and championed anything and everything because she believed the same things he did. Elise stood beside him, always. She was there because they together created a kinetic strength that allowed them to keep moving through life and doing more and more and more.
They supported each other in her work, in his work. She was there for him every step of the way. I think of them, and I think of a couple that were linked, heart and soul.
When two people love each other so obviously and respect each other and adore each other, you've got something to give to others. And that's what they did.
We really thought we could shake enough hands to win a race. And he and I consequently had calluses along our hands, both of us, from shaking hands with so many people.
Elise Winter was a gracious, lovely First Lady for the state of Mississippi. She entertained everyone equally, and she wanted everyone to feel at home.
It was kind of a Mississippi version of Camelot down here. Governor Winter and Ms. Winter would put together these dinners at the mansions of featured guests like Eudora Welty, like Walker Percy, like Shelby Foote.
He invites Leontine Price to the governor's mansion to sing.
For one motivation was to present to the people from outside Mississippi the best possible picture of Mississippi.
I received an invitation from Governor Winter to visit him at the State House. He took my hand and he said, "This house belongs to the state, and don't forget, it belongs to you because you are a part of Mississippi." I thought that extraordinary.
Even people who didn't vote for him were proud when they'd see that all these people would come to the governor's mansion and that he lifted them up as Mississippians.
Governor Winter, by definition, had to have the loud voice on issues. But Ms. Winter was often the effective, quiet voice in trying to bring change. Sometimes the quiet voice is more important than the loud voice, and we're grateful for that.
She was a force of gentle persuasion. She went on to have this whole other life. When they left the governor's mansion, William Winter received a call from President Carter with this crazy idea that they could build housing for the working poor. And in 1986, Elise Winter and 3 men signed the document of incorporation for Habitat for Humanity Metro Jackson. 35 years later, there are 2,000 Mississippians who get up every morning in a safe, decent, affordable home in the Tri-County area simply because of Elise Winter. She and Dick Malpas procured the U.S. Canadian Softwood Award, which led to $100 million worth of lumber that went out to 19,000 habitats in the United States to build homes. She made the point to do the work that said, we are all Mississippians, we are all here for the betterment of our state, and we are all brothers and sisters in Christ. She loved dedications, especially dedications where she worked on the houses and gotten a chance to know the homeowners and meet their children. She radiated with the joy and the happiness of seeing what this work had done. You produce a place where good things happen to people who again and again say, we don't want a handout, we just want a hand up. And Elise made it happen over and over and over again.
Her passion and compassion, her spirit that drove her to do something about this situation that she was not going to sit idly by and not do something.
In 2011, we needed a way to recognize extraordinary volunteers, and we named an award for her, the Elise Winter Founders Award, because she exemplifies everything that you want in a servant leader. In 2015, the state of Mississippi recognized her as the Volunteer of the Year, and she was given an award by then Governor Bryant and his wife, First Lady Deborah. She was remarkable. She was one of a kind, and she'll be missed.
In the work they accomplished, the courage they displayed,
the humility they embodied, the standards they set, the vision they conveyed, and the many lives they touched. Elise and William Winter were truly remarkable. Their impact endures.
Mr. President, before I introduce you, I'm going to just take a moment to briefly introduce my congressman, a fellow that I've known for over 50 years. Last week or so, a national reporter called me and asked me would I say something about the congressman. And I told the reporter, he's the most unusual politician you'll ever meet. He's not interested in getting rich. He's not interested in a higher office, and he shuns publicity. Mr. Congressman, let us recognize you. Benny Thompson. Good afternoon. My name is Reuben Anderson, and I'm honored to be a part of this tribute to my dear friends, William and Elise Winter. Governor Winter was a hero of mine, and I miss him deeply, as we all do. Governor Winter and I shared a passion for our state's history. Anybody that would serve on the board of trustees of any institution for 50 years had a commitment. We would not be in these buildings today but for Governor William Winter. He leaned on everybody. He started with this young man here and wouldn't cut him loose until you promised to build these buildings. Governor Winter also shared a commitment to change the state flag. And he was on my mind when I accepted the old flag on the day that it flew for the last time over our state capitol. That flag would never have come down had Governor Winter not started in the early 80s to bring to everybody's attention that the damage that that flag was doing to our state. It took some courage too. The courage of our Speaker, Mr. Gunn, and our Lieutenant Governor, Haley, Deborah Hoseman. Thank you, gentlemen. Today, I'm deeply honored to introduce President Bill Clinton, whose extraordinary career Governor Winter and I watched with great admiration. Governor Winter and President Clinton had a special relationship as two Southern governors with like-minded ideas. Governor Winter co-chaired both of President Clinton's Mississippi presidential campaigns, and I was proud to co-chair with Governor Winter President Clinton's 1996 presidential campaign. Ladies and gentlemen, help me give a warm Mississippi welcome to the 42nd President of the United States.
Go get him. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Justice Anderson, for the introduction and for your service. Congressman, thank you very much for being here. And former Congressman and Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Espy, thank you for being here. And to all the former governors and other officials, thank you, Kate and Spence, and all those at the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. Bill and Elise loved serving here for so long. Thanks to Pamela Jr. for the important word here, and I love the tour I got. You know you're getting old when you see people in the exhibitions who are old friends of yours. It's probably more important than term limits to convince people to hang it up, you know. In this case, it was an honor. I actually met Fannie Lou Hamer as a boy. Merle is an old friend of mine, and there are many others, but I love seeing William Winter and Elise in any pictures. When I ran for governor in the late 70s, I already knew quite a bit about Bill Winter, because back then, President Carter had just been elected a few years earlier, but there was to be a Southern governor then, it was basically about what you saw in the film. You tried to make the schools better, rustle up a few more jobs, and do the right thing on civil rights. Try to open the doors so that we were all more or less on an even footing, and we knew there was a long way to go, and you had to start in the schools. Maybe we were even too optimistic about all the economic benefits that would flow if we could equalize educational opportunities, but we believed it. Nobody more than William Winter. When I got elected, he was there, then I wasn't. Thanks to guys like Haley, I got beat in the Reagan landslide in 1980. And then I got reelected. And my last 2 years coincided with Bill's term, and we were neighbors and so much more. I thought he was the luckiest guy. First of all, you couldn't exactly tell in these old pictures. Elise Winter, if you'll forgive me, God, for being incorrect, was a beautiful woman when she was young. She was so beautiful, and in such a nice way, you know, and Lily, Eleanor, all the assembled spouses, children, grandchildren. You come from remarkable grandparents who had the most unusual balance. They were highly intelligent, highly energetic, and openly ambitious, and as good as gold. Because their ambition was for something worth being ambitious about. I was going through this collection of Bill's writing and speeches, trying to prepare for this day and say something that not everybody already knew, or at least that maybe hadn't thought about. And I found these lines, which he originally wrote on the back of an old envelope. What are the rewards that are meaningful? There is no point at which any of us can say we have it made. Life is a process, a struggle, and the meaning is in the process. Life should be an unfolding of new opportunities and new goals. So long as there are areas of injustice, human lives unused, physical ills unconquered, natural resources wasted, and corruption unchallenged, there will be meaningful work to do. I think that's why we can all have this conversation today. I mean, they were in their late 90s, and I was 20 years younger than they were when we started doing all that stuff. And a lot of young people probably wish they could have kept up with Bill when he was jogging the streets in his 80s. So the ultimate lesson of their lives is that how your lives turn out, assuming you don't have a terrible piece of bad luck, is largely a function of how you decide to keep score. And we're all the time keeping score on ourselves. And it's not like playing golf when nobody's looking. You can't just kick the ball back in the fairway. If you're keeping score on yourself, you know what the deal is. And they did. It's hard for me to explain, but I was always mildly surprised and deeply grateful that they were friends and supporters of mine. I remember when I decided to run for president, Haley, one of your colleagues, called me from the White House and said, "Let me tell you how Washington works." He says, the political press has to have somebody at every election. And they're really elitists. They will believe anything we tell them about Arkansas. We have decided to give them you. So you shouldn't run. And I gave I said, I really don't want to, but I like President Bush very much, actually. I said, but he thinks he's got 70-some% approval and he's not using his mandate to make America better. And I said, I'm perfectly happy to stay here. Just you guys get the show on the road. And so then he proceeded to tell me why that was a dumb idea. And then he said, look, this is a really pretty speech you're giving. You just remember, they got to have somebody at every election. We're going to feed them you. We're going to do it early. Your life will be over. Don't do this. Nobody talked to me like that since my next door neighbor had thrown a rope on the ground when I was 10 years old, when she got a BB gun before I did and said, if you step over that rope, I'll shoot you. I thought about it because she passed away just about 2 weeks ago. And I stepped over the rope, she shot me, and we became friends for life. Life makes funny friendships in funny ways. All I know is from the minute I met Bill Winter, I never had a scintilla of doubt that whatever happened in our friendship, whatever happened in his life, I was with one of the most authentic people I would ever know. That he was who he seemed to be. Then when I met Elise, I realized how he had sustained 2 losses for governor and many other setbacks and still found happiness. It's really important, to do the right thing. But if you reach my age, you realize it's also important, if you can, to have a good time when you're doing it. My friend James Carville's out there. Some of you might know who he is. And we were talking the other day. He said, when's this service? And I told him, and he drove up here from New Orleans today because he admired Bill Winter. When we were young, it was relatively rare for somebody who could actually win to stick his neck out on civil rights and to have a good time doing it. So I thank all of you for that. I got up this morning and I was talking to Hillary on the way out the door, and she said, God, they have a beautiful governor's mansion. And she said, tell them, take them to evidence that you're not just making a speech about that. So I brought this. Governor and Mrs. William Winter, 1980-1984. In this limited edition of 100, the number of this box is 10. So how long ago was that? Almost 40 years, right? I was here. It was the end of their term and the beginning of my second go-around, and I was here. I thought I had died and gone to heaven, spend the night in the Mississippi Governor's Mansion. You know, all of us hillbillies from across the river, we always felt kind of low rent compared to the planter class. But anyway, I got this 38 years ago. And it is in our living room with a few other things that we mark the passage of our life with. I marked the passage of our lives with this because I was so blessed to know a person who was truly good, truly great, and truly fun. And I may have had some small role in what he later did in racial reconciliation because I asked him to join the race commission that I established in my second term. And the great black historian from North Carolina, John Hope Franklin, was the chairman of it, and also an amazing man. And they were great. I told Bill, I said, between the two of you, you'll probably keep the younger ones from just gnawing each other to death. And they were great. They showed you how to do right, how to unearth the past without destroying people's feelings and dignity, and make a beginning that is new. Oh, we got to do all that stuff today. And you shouldn't... And we shouldn't have to wait until we love people and lose them to know that. So you guys remember what I said in this. So go back and read what Bill Renner wrote about how he was keeping score. Because we all got to keep score. And we all are keeping score, whether we admit it or not. Oh, I wish I were a little thinner. I wish I could jump a little higher. If I had LeBron James' body, I would have gone a different line of work. All of you, we all do these things, right? You're not even thinking about it half the time. We're always constantly keeping score. So I am honored to be here in reverence and joy to honor two people who kept score in the right way, and it left them off in a good place. That's what we have to do. Think about it for the next few days. Think about Bill and Elise Winter and keeping score in the right way. Thank you.
Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us live to make men free, while God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching